Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're jumping into something pretty significant that's reshaping our online world. Internet censorship and surveillance. It's a growing trend globally.
Yeah, and we're going to explore this kind of chilling idea that one author calls a digital prison.
Right. So to help us unpack all that, we're focusing on a really insightful article.
Exactly. It's by Matthew Catt, titled "The Digital Prison Walls Closing in Internet Censorship, Online Safety Acts, and the Rise of Digital Authoritarianism."
Okay.
And our goal for you today, our listener, is to really dig into the main arguments in this piece. We want to understand the tools being used and think about what it might mean for your freedom and privacy online as these things develop.
All right, let's get straight into it then. The author argues that governments often use specific stories, specific narratives, to justify bringing in more control online. What are those narratives? How do they actually get people to accept them?
Well, the article lays out two really powerful ones. First, there's the whole idea of external threats, think terrorism or, weapons of mass destruction, that kind of thing.
Okay, fear-based.
Exactly. And the second one, which is maybe even more potent emotionally, is the narrative about protecting children from harm online, like sexual crimes.
Right, very emotive.
Very. And the author's point is that these are used as sort of emotional levers. They make us, the citizens, more willing to accept tighter laws because they play on our fears or a sense of moral duty.
That makes sense. You tap into something fundamental. And the article gives a specific example, right? The UK Online Safety Act.
Yeah, it does.
Can you tell us a bit about that? It was updated in 2023, I think.
That's right. And it basically gives UK authorities pretty broad powers to censor and monitor online content that gets labeled as harmful, especially harmful to kids.
Okay, harmful. That sounds potentially broad.
Well, that's precisely the author's critique. He takes a really critical look at it. While it's framed as being about child protection, his argument is that it's fundamentally more about controlling the flow of information.
How so? What's the evidence for that view in the article?
He points to examples where elites seem to face less accountability. He mentions the Prince Andrew scandal, other exploitation gangs, suggesting that maybe protecting children isn't the only motive, or perhaps not the primary one, for all parts of the law. The bigger point he's making is that these safety laws, well, they can end up being used to shut down uncomfortable truths or prevent public discussion. They could even silence whistleblowers or victims instead of actually helping them.
So the worry is that harmful could cover dissent, not just illegal stuff. And this isn't just happening in the UK, is it? The author sees this as a wider pattern. What about the US?
Yeah, absolutely. The author definitely flags the U.S. as part of this broader trend towards more internet surveillance. He specifically mentions things like age verification laws. Ohio has one for adult websites, for example.
Right, I've heard about those.
And the article explicitly warns this is a kind of slippery slope. Today it's adult sites, but tomorrow it could easily be applied to sites about politics or maybe the Second Amendment or, well, anything deemed sensitive.
And how does this compare to other places?
Well, he draws a pretty stark comparison between things like needing to upload your ID or use facial scans to access websites, which is happening more now, and the kind of surveillance you see in authoritarian states.
That's quite a link to make.
It is. And he notes that actually Bitcoin and crypto exchanges in the U.S. already require these sorts of checks. So it's not entirely new territory, even if it feels like it, for accessing regular websites.
It's true, that idea of uploading ID just to browse felt really extreme not long ago. Now, less so.
Exactly. The normalization creep.
So if the US and UK are on this path, the article mentions China as sort of the endpoint example. What does it say about China's system?
Yeah, China is presented as where these trends could logically lead if taken to the extreme. They have this incredibly extensive digital ID system. Facial recognition is used for almost everything, getting a phone, a bank account, digital payments.
Wow.
And then there's the social credit system on top of that. If you get blacklisted on that system, you can literally be blocked from accessing essential services travel, certain jobs.
So it connects online activity to real-world consequences directly?
Precisely. The author argues this is the ultimate convergence. You've got biometric scanning plus a digital ID plus economic controls. It allows for a really deep level of social management. If you post the wrong thing, maybe you can't buy that train ticket. That's the implication.
That's pretty chilling. The article also touches on past events, maybe setting the stage for this. How does the author link something like the pandemic to these current trends?
It's an interesting, maybe controversial point he makes. He suggests the COVID-19 pandemic gave governments a kind of trial run for mass control measures.
A trial run.
Yeah. And he argues that during that time, the internet was actually a bit of a weak spot for control because people could still go online, discuss things, question the official narratives, outside the main channels.
Okay, I see the logic there.
So the implication is that governments might have learned from that, and in future crises, they might try to implement even tighter controls on online information to prevent that kind of dissent, using the pandemic precedents as justification.
Right. Okay, so historical precedent is one factor. What about new technologies? Does the author point to specific tech that could accelerate this digital prison, make the walls higher, so to speak?
He definitely does. Two big ones stand out in the article. First, Central Bank Digital Currencies, CBDCs.
Right, we hear a lot about those.
The author sees them as a major tool for control. The argument is they'd allow governments really fine-grained control over your finances, potentially dictating what you can buy, where, maybe even when. It links your money directly to state control in a new way.
Okay, so control through finance. What's the second one?
The second one is pre-crime AI models. He mentions companies like Palantir, who develop systems that don't just track past actions, but try to predict future behavior or risks.
Predict. How does that work?
Well, imagine AI analyzing everything, your posts, your purchases, your movements, to flag you as a potential risk before you've actually done anything. It shifts surveillance from reaction to, well, prediction and preemption.
That sounds like something out of science fiction, but it's real tech.
It is, and it fundamentally changes the nature of surveillance.
So with all this, the justifications, the laws, the tech, what's the overall impact on things like anonymity and freedom online, according to the author?
Well, his view is pretty stark, really. He argues that laws presented under the banner of fighting hate speech or ensuring public safety are often, in practice, tools to get rid of online anonymity and clamp down on dissent.
So chipping away at the ability to speak freely without revealing your identity.
Exactly. And he also claims that traditional media, and even places like Wikipedia, are already heavily influenced, if not controlled, by state or corporate interests, which narrows the space for truly independent information even further.
And there's this bigger vision mentioned about digital identity being used for almost total social control. What does that look like in the article's view?
Yeah, he discusses models proposed by groups like the UN and the World Economic Forum. These models apparently envision your digital identity becoming the key to access almost everything.
Like what?
Social media, shopping online, travel, food access, healthcare, banking. Basically, your entire interaction with society mediated through this digital ID.
Wow.
And the core concern the author raises, the phrase he uses that really sticks, is that this shifts us from a world of rights to a world of permission.
Permission replacing rights. Explain that a bit more.
It means things we currently think of as fundamental freedoms could become privileges. Privileges that are granted based on your digital identity and your behavior, and crucially, privileges that can be taken away.
That's a profound shift. So if people listening find these trends worrying, does the author offer any way out, any paths for resistance?
He does. He strongly advocates for using what he calls freedom tech.
Freedom tech, like what?
Well, he highlights Bitcoin, for example. He presents it as unstoppable money, meaning it's designed to operate outside of government or central bank control, a way to transact freely.
Okay, so financial autonomy.
Yeah.
Anything else?
Yeah. He also mentions Noster, N-O-S-T-E-R. It's described as a decentralized social media protocol. Think of it like Twitter, but without a central company or server. So theoretically, it can't be easily censored or shut down.
Interesting. Decentralized alternatives.
Right. And his main call to action for individuals is really to educate themselves about these kinds of technologies, to learn how they work as a way to maintain some personal sovereignty in this changing digital landscape.
And does he give a time frame? Is this urgent?
Oh, absolutely. There's a real sense of urgency in the article. He specifically flags the next 5 years, like 2025 to 2030, as being a critical window.
Critical in what way?
He suggests that in this period, populations might either get locked into these digital prisons, as he calls them, or they'll manage to build and use these alternative self-sovereign systems and communities.
So a fork in the road, essentially.
That's the picture he paints. And his final plea is really direct. Resist these digital identity systems, especially when they link your online speech or your behavior to your ability to access basic goods and services in the real world.
Okay, so we've really covered a lot there, digging into Matthew Katz's arguments about this concept of a digital prison. We've looked at the justifications used, the technologies involved, and his pretty urgent call to pay attention and maybe push back.
Yeah, and it leaves you with a really important question, doesn't it? If the tools we use every day for convenience, for connection, are potentially turning into these instruments of control, well, how do our own choices online matter? The small things, what we click, what we share. Are we inadvertently helping build these walls?
That's definitely something to think about. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive. We hope this discussion gives you plenty to consider as you navigate, well, our increasingly digital world.